Prime Field.
ESPN's Matchup Predictor says Illinois wins this game 58.9% of the time. So why does betting against UConn in April still feel completely insane? That's the whole mystery here. Because on paper, Illinois looks like the team built to take this. More offense, more scoring punch, more lineup flexibility, more ways to pressure a defense. But UConn is UConn. And with Dan Hurley's teams, the pattern has been almost unreal. Since 2011, the Huskies don't really do solid tournament runs. They either flame out early, miss the bracket entirely, or win the whole thing. There's no middle ground. So now we get the question that makes this matchup so dangerous. Is Illinois about to cash in on the revenge angle and finally break the formula? Or is this just another year where UConn ignores the numbers and turns March into its own private script? Because if you're Illinois, this game is personal. UConn already beat them once this season at Madison Square Garden. That result has been sitting there ever since. And now the rematch is bigger than anybody could have imagined. Final Four, national title path, legacy game. Illinois gets another shot, but this time they were not the same team. This is what makes Illinois different from the version UConn already saw. They're not just talented, they're explosive. This team can put points on the board in waves, and that's exactly why the analytics love them. They've got the kind of offense that can make even elite teams look one step slow. When Illinois gets into rhythm, the floor opens up, the pace changes, and suddenly the whole game starts feeling tilted. And the biggest reason that pressure feels so real is Keaton Wagler. He just dropped 25 in the Elite 8 and looked like the engine of the entire run. Not just a scorer, not just a hot hand. The engine. That's important because this is where a lot of people get the matchup wrong. They turn it into a star aura discussion. They start chasing the biggest names and the biggest brands. But Illinois didn't get here by living off hype. They got here because they play with force, because they create extra possessions, and because they don't rely on one guy carrying the whole thing. That showed up against Iowa. Illinois didn't just win. They controlled the game. They owned the glass. They made the game ugly when it needed to be ugly. They proved they can win with offense and still beat you with physicality. That's a massive warning sign for UConn. Because if Illinois gets the game on its terms, this doesn't become a clean chess match. It becomes pressure, pace, bodies, extra chances, momentum swings. The kind of game where a favorite can suddenly start looking even stronger than the numbers predicted. And then there's the hidden swing piece, Andrej Stojaković. That bench punch matters more than people think. Illinois isn't coming in with one obvious star and a bunch of passengers. They've got secondary scoring that can flip the feel of a semifinal in a matter of minutes. And in a one-game environment, that matters almost as much as star power, because when the starters sit, some teams survive. Illinois can still hit you. But this is where the matchup stops being normal, because the second you start making the clean, logical case for Illinois, UConn becomes terrifying. Not because they've been perfect, because they haven't. In fact, their Elite 8 win over Duke should make Illinois feel encouraged. UConn needed a miracle. They were down 19 in the first half. They were shaky. They weren't in control. They looked like a team that could finally be dragged out of the tournament. And then everything changed on one shot. Braylon Mullins launches from 35 feet with 0.4 seconds left, and suddenly Duke is gone, UConn is alive, and the entire tournament starts feeling haunted again. That's the danger. Because if you're Illinois, you can watch that game one of two ways. You can say UConn is vulnerable, and that's fair. Or you can say UConn just survived the exact type of game that usually kills everybody else, and that's even scarier. That's why this matchup is so weird. Illinois has the stronger analytical case. But UConn has the stronger psychological footprint. Every time they look beatable, they somehow become more dangerous. Every time the bracket starts making sense, the Huskies turn the tournament into something irrational. That Duke game wasn't just a comeback. It was a reminder. UConn doesn't need everything to look clean. They don't need to dominate wire to wire. They just need the game to still be alive late. If it's alive late, they believe. And once UConn believes, the opponent starts feeling the weight of every past March run, every banner, every ridiculous escape, every moment where the Huskies turned one game into a mythology test. That's the part no stat line can fully price in. And if this game swings the way UConn wants, it probably starts with one player, Terrace Reed Jr. This is the real matchup inside the matchup. Because while everybody else is busy talking about brands, guards, and revenge storylines, Reed has quietly become the guy who changes everything for UConn. Against Duke, he put up 26 and 9. Not as a side note, not as a nice supporting performance. He was the reason the game stayed alive long enough for the miracle to happen. That matters because Reed changes the geometry of the floor. If he gets deep paint touches, the defense compresses. If the defense compresses, UConn's offense starts breathing. Rotations get longer, closeouts get weaker. Suddenly the whole game starts bending toward the Huskies. And this is where Illinois has to be perfect. Because if Reed becomes the best player on the floor, the revenge story gets a lot harder to write. Illinois has the front court toughness to make this uncomfortable. They just proved they can win with rebounding and force. They're not going to be scared of contact, they're not going to get punked automatically, but there's a difference between competing inside and controlling inside. That's what Illinois has to figure out early. Can they hit Reed before he settles in? Can they keep him from turning every half-court possession into a stress test? Can they make UConn win from the perimeter instead of the paint? Because if the answer is no, then the entire tone of the game changes. Now Illinois isn't playing with freedom anymore. Now they're reacting. Now they're trying to solve UConn instead of dictating the terms. And that is exactly where the Huskies become hardest to beat. This is why the revenge angle is real, but also incomplete. Yes, Illinois wants this one back. Yes, they've changed since the first meeting. Yes, they have the offense, depth, and momentum to knock out the defending champs. All of that is true. But revenge only carries you so far if the game tightens. Because then it stops being about the regular season loss. It stops being about wanting payback. It becomes about who trusts the moment more. And that is where UConn has the edge nobody wants to talk about. Illinois is playing for a program trying to get back to the top of the sport. UConn is playing like a program that already lives there. That difference matters. Illinois is carrying the pressure of opportunity, the pressure of history, the pressure of a fan base that has been waiting forever for this stage. UConn's pressure is different. UConn's pressure feels familiar. They've turned Final Fours into routine. They've turned huge moments into expectation. They've turned chaos into identity. And that's why this game feels so split down the middle. Illinois has the hotter offensive case. UConn has the colder tournament blood. Illinois looks like the team that can win. UConn feels like the team that knows how. That's not a small difference. In a semifinal, that might be the whole thing. So what decides it? Probably this. Who gets the game style they want? If Illinois turns this into a flowing, aggressive offense and depth game, they can absolutely break UConn. That's the path. Push the tempo when it's there. Let Wagler attack. Get bench production. Keep the floor spread. Make UConn defend multiple threats without letting Reed dictate every possession. That's how revenge becomes reality. But if UConn drags this thing into a scarred, physical, late possession fight, the repeat formula starts waking up again. Because that is where their identity becomes overwhelming. Then it's not just about shot making, it's about poise, it's about toughness. It's about whether Illinois can still look like Illinois when every possession suddenly feels twice as heavy. And that's where the 58.9% number starts feeling fragile. Smart? Absolutely. Comfortable? Not even close. Because analytics can tell you who should win under normal conditions. UConn specializes in making conditions feel anything but normal. That's the trap. So what are we actually watching here? A revenge game? Absolutely. A battle between the hotter offense and the nastier March identity? Definitely. A chance for Illinois to prove the first meeting means nothing now? Yes. But it's also something bigger. It's a test of whether this UConn formula can finally be broken, because the Huskies keep doing the same impossible thing. They keep surviving, they keep dragging opponents into late game stress. They keep turning tournament logic into folklore. And Illinois might be exactly the team built to end it. They've got the firepower, they've got the depth, they've got the motivation, they've got the reason. But if Tarris Reed Jr. owns the paint early, if UConn keeps the game within striking distance, and if this thing is still hanging in the balance in the final 2 minutes, then Illinois isn't just playing a basketball game anymore. They're playing the entire UConn tournament script. And that's why this matchup is so brutal to call. The numbers say Illinois. The history whispers UConn. The revenge angle says the door is open. The repeat formula says the door was never really closed. So maybe that's the answer. This isn't just revenge game or repeat formula, it's both. And whichever one wins is probably heading straight to the national title game.
Prime Field